What's up, guys? A nice winning day yesterday. 3 winning days in a row. I think I was 5-2 on this show. I was 6-2 overall because I threw in the under on the Ravens Texans game. Once I saw it got up to 44.5. I played it and it just got there, just in under the number. Should have been easier than it was because that game there was a Houston punt return touchdown that was really throwing the game off. They only had 3 points on offense, so my handicap was pretty much correct on that game. It should have been an even easier cover for the Ravens if you take that punt return off the board, and it should have gone further under if you take that punt return off the board. And I don't know what the Ravens' last touchdown was, but I wasn't paying total attention to the game at that point, and I saw that I think Houston had the ball, and then all of a sudden it was like Baltimore had another touchdown on the board. So I don't know if they scored a defensive touchdown or what happened there, but Baltimore, huge win, easy win. The San Francisco game, I was not correct on. Deebo Samuel went down. I think that is huge. They lost every game that he was out during the season, and it seems like Brock Purdy, man, it seems like he really doesn't have a total grasp on what he's doing offensively without Deebo Samuel in there. It just seems to really change their offense. And I don't know. I don't know if he's the greatest quarterback, man, because a quarterback shouldn't be that impacted by one guy not being there, especially with San Francisco. You have other really talented players on the offense. So I don't know, but San Francisco's defense was also really horrible in that game. So they deserve to not cover. They probably deserve to lose the game, to be honest. Green Bay, their offense just couldn't be stopped. And it was San Francisco was extremely lucky that Green Bay didn't have more points on the board. Green Bay had 3 drives down into the inside the San Francisco 15 that resulted in 6 total points, including their opening drive, which is a really good drive. That took a lot of time off the board, really hurt the over players in that game because it was like an 8-something minute drive probably, and then resulted only in 3 points. So they had that. They got held to another field goal, and then, as everybody knows, they had that one other driver. They went for it on 4th down at the San Francisco whatever. I'm pretty sure it was in the red zone. I think that was the right call. People are saying, well, you should take the guaranteed 3 points. I actually disagree. When you're the underdog like that, you're trying to win the game, and it's a 4th and 1. The math definitely says to go for it, but I think even the situation says to go for it, because if you don't get it, the worst possible scenario, I mean, yeah, it is kind of deflating. That's true, but you do pin San Francisco's offense way back, and I think Samuel might have been out at that point, so you're still winning the field position battle at the very least if you do that. But they got the 1st down, man. I mean, you can watch the replays of that. Jordan Love, I think it was pretty clear that he got past the line. They gave him a really bad spot. So bad reffing continues. The reffing might have been trying to help San Francisco a little bit. I don't know, but he got the 1st down. And Green Bay, like I said, their offense was really moving. And San Francisco's defense, man, their front 4 is good, but I don't know. Their secondary, I think, has some questions. And Green Bay was moving the ball with ease, really. Like I said, they should have had more points on the board than just 6 with the drives like that. They didn't punt at all until sometime in the second half. It might have even been in the 4th quarter. I don't even know. But then, as everybody knows, San Francisco wound up getting that final touchdown. They didn't do a whole lot, really, in that game, but they were able to get that touchdown to take the lead. And then Jordan Love, his inexperience showed. He'd already thrown 1 interception. I think Greenlaw or whatever his name is had both interceptions. He wound up throwing the interception that sealed the game when Green Bay just needed to get into field goal range and get that field goal attempt, even though it was raining. And there seemed to be some issues there. Their field goal kicker, both field goal kickers in that game, I think are rookies, actually. And Green Bay's missed a 41-yard field goal at some point in the game. And San Francisco had one blocked at some point in the game too, I believe. But they were both somewhere in the 40-something yard range. So a lot of crazy stuff going on there. But Jordan Love basically turned into Brett Favre near the end there. People have been saying he looks like Aaron Rodgers, maybe. I mean, he's been surprisingly good down the stretch, but he threw 2 interceptions last night, and that last one that sealed the game when they could have tied the game on a field goal, that was just a bad decision, really bad decision. You got to throw that ball away and live for another play or two, because he threw it back across his body right into the middle of the field. definitely something that Brett Favre would do. And I know Brett Favre sometimes would complete those passes, although a lot of times he would throw picks. And that's what happened with Jordan Love there. So San Francisco escaped. So my day wound up being good, and I'm at a new like personal peak over the last couple of years since I've been using Action Network to track all these plays. College basketball was a 4-0 sweep, and it was just virtually no sweat in any of those games, except maybe Ohio State. Ohio State was kind of hovering right near where the number was like the whole time, but they were covering for, I think, a majority of the game as opposed to not covering. And it got back to within 9 near the end when I think Penn State hit a 3, and I'm like, no. But Ohio State was able to still get it done. And then the other ones all pretty much cashed easily. It looked like Oklahoma State was going to hit on the money line too, and they wound up losing it late, close late loss for Oklahoma State after I think they were winning by 8 with like 4 minutes left. So I thought that was going to come through too on the money line. It looked like I was going to have a day where I didn't lose at all, but that didn't happen. And then the hockey game, the Canadians certainly did not get there, but that was closer than the final score looked at least. The Bruins did outplay them, but that was a game where Montreal was hanging in that game, man. They were up 2-1 in the first period, but then they were down 3-2 at the end of the first. They were still hanging in that game into the third period. It was 5-4 Bruins in the third period, so the final score isn't totally indicative of what actually happened in the game. Of the Bruins wound up getting another hat trick, I think from Heinen this time. But so at least I'm happy that the Bruins won because they're my team. But so I don't know. Does that cover all the games that we had yesterday? I think it probably does. Let's go to today, man. We got much shorter card today, and I was looking because one of the situations that I like to play most in college basketball is, playing against teams that are in the massive letdown spot. So that was like the one game I wanted to have my eye on here in college basketball, which was to fade South Florida, man. South Florida just beat Memphis on their own court. That was a huge win, big upset win. I think they stormed the court. They beat a top 10 ranked team, although I think the rankings are off. I don't think Memphis is as good as a top 10 team. I don't even think it's really that close. I think they're probably, KenPom, I think probably has them somewhere in the 30s, maybe even 40. South Florida, huge win that they pulled off there. Now they host Wichita State, but that's the problem because you'd want to go against South Florida. They just had a huge win. Actually, they didn't storm the court. Excuse me. That was on the road. What am I saying? But I did watch the end of that game. That was a huge upset win on the road for South Florida, which makes it even a little bit crazier, actually. It was a 9.5-point upset. And South Florida was getting blown out of the building, too. They were down like by 20, I think, at halftime or somewhere around there. And they came all the way back and won right at the end. Max effort there. But the problem is they're playing Wichita State, and Wichita State came close to beating Florida Atlantic after they played Memphis, although Memphis killed them. So people are probably going to look at this and think it's very easy to take South Florida, though, because Wichita State is on a 6-game loss streak, but they lost to Kansas. I mean, you can't fault them for that. You can't fault them for losing to Kansas State either. And North Texas isn't a bad team either, but the worst loss in that whole thing was to Temple, which that one is like, what are you doing losing to Temple? But that was sandwiched in between all these bigger games, so maybe that's the excuse there. And then Memphis and Florida Atlantic, FAU, also big game. So I do still lean to Wichita State here because South Florida is in the huge letdown spot and coming back home to their home crowd, probably celebrating that thing, whereas Wichita State lost again to Florida Atlantic. But I can't do it, man, because Wichita State is absolutely in a play against situation too because of what happened in that game. They were winning by a ton against Florida Atlantic, FAU. They were wiping them out. This was at Wichita, I believe. They were, this is at Florida Atlantic. What am I saying? Wow, both of these teams are actually on the road. Florida Atlantic was a 15.5-point favorite. Wichita was leading like the whole game, way ahead of them. And Florida Atlantic, FAU, crawled all the way back, took the lead, and then wound up putting Wichita away. And it was still really close. It was a game that was within 3 or 4 with a couple minutes left. So those both are teams, unfortunately, those are both teams that are in play against spots. So I can't do it, man. I can't do it. And then we have some other situations that are kind of like that in hockey, I think, and maybe in the NBA where you have teams that are just both in bad spots playing each other. Teams that are on back-to-backs against teams that are like returning home from road trips. And I don't want to go through all of them, but it's just, you can't really do anything about it. I don't want to play. I don't want to get involved in the situations where there are teams that are in bad spots on both ends. But I am actually going to do one and play on a team that's in a back-to-back. In the NBA, I'm going to fade the Denver Nuggets because I think they're in a sandwich spot. They're in a letdown spot. They just went into Boston and upset Boston, unfortunately for me. And the Celtics were winning most of that game and kind of hovering right around the number. And Denver won outright at the end of it. Now they go to Washington, which is like, are they really going to be paying attention to Washington after riding that high like that? And they did play a close game against Philadelphia, the game before Boston, too, although they had 2 days off between those, and they have 1 day off now. But they do have Indiana up next a day, and Indiana now has Siakam, and Halliburton is back. So that's a big game for a bigger game for Denver there, too. And Indiana, they did pretty well in the in-season tournament. And then Denver has New York, the Knicks, and then Philadelphia, and then Milwaukee, and then Oklahoma City all after this. This is a spot where they just might totally overlook their opponents. That's why I'm taking Washington. It's a huge number, though. Taking a lot of points. I think Denver's in a huge letdown spot coming off the game against Boston. And they are probably in a sandwich because all their games upcoming are bigger games than this Washington one. Washington just lost to the San Antonio Spurs, which I kind of called that because that was yesterday, but Washington was off a decent performance on the 18th on Thursday against the New York Knicks, a pretty good defensive team. Washington got caught yesterday by the San Antonio Spurs, unfortunately. For the Spurs, unfortunately for Washington, I mean, and they're on a back-to-back, but they are not traveling. At least they're staying at home, and I think they have Denver coming into their house. I mean, they might have had some aspect of a look ahead yesterday and dropping that game to San Antonio. Before the San Antonio game, they had a day off, and before the New York game, they had 2 days off. So their schedule their rest situation isn't like the worst that it could possibly be. The back-to-back is mitigated a little bit, at least by the fact that they're not traveling. They're just getting a ton of points at home, and I think Denver might just not pay enough attention to this game. Washington, I think they'll pay attention to it. I mean, it's Denver. They're the returning champs. They just beat Boston. It's a big game for Washington. Denver coming into their house. So I like it for Washington. This line, let's see. What do we got on this number? Nuggets are up from 13 to 13.5. They do have 93% of the cash and 85% of the tickets, so I don't know about that, but we can take the Wizards getting a huge point spread at home, plus 13.5. Let's do it on that one. And then I forgot to mention in college basketball, South Florida is up to 4.5, and they have 74% of the tickets and 66% of the cash. So the market does look to be in early agreement with me on the Wichita State side there, but I, again, don't want to play Wichita State either in the spot that they're in. But anyway, back to the NBA. Yeah, Washington Wizards plus 13.5, and then over to NHL. NHL, we got a lot of teams that are like returning home from road trips. So you want to go against them, but they're against teams that are also in bad spots. Like I think the New York Islanders are returning home from a road trip, but Dallas is in some sort of bad spot. I don't even know. I looked through all these games. It's just like, yeah, I don't want to play any of these except I'm playing a team that is returning home from a road trip, and the market looks to be in nice agreement with me on playing the Seattle Kraken, the Kraken. What's Kraken? I'm playing Seattle. It looks like Toronto's down from minus 120 to minus 110 on the money line now. So you can still get Seattle as like an even money underdog at some prices, which is what I grabbed. Even playing them as a very, very small favorite at like minus 104, somewhere in that range, I think is fine as well. Really just kind of playing them to win the game, but I'd rather have them as an underdog, of course. If the line's moving down to Toronto minus 110, you got 55% of the tickets on Toronto, 88% of the cash, though, on Seattle. So the market looks like it is strongly indicating on the Seattle side. Toronto's in the worst spot of the two, man. Toronto has had like basically absolutely no rest. They're playing the fourth and final game of a road trip. And yeah, they might want to split the road trip and go 2-2, but this game is surrounded by games against Vancouver, which that was a really tough game. They played against Vancouver last night. That was a game. Toronto was losing 3-0 in the first period. They came all the way back to tie it at 3-3, fell back down 4-3 at the end of the second period, tied it again in the third period, shorthanded to tie it 4-4, and then they finally succumbed. And they We're losing 5-4 pretty late in the third period, too. So that was a full effort trying to beat one of the teams with the best records in hockey. I neglected to mention the Vancouver Canucks yesterday among the best teams in the West. I'm sorry when I was talking about Colorado and Winnipeg. But yeah, Vancouver's up there, too. Toronto outshot Vancouver in that game 46-21. They got out hit a little bit, and they dominated the faceoff percentage to 61.8%. So Toronto actually, in some ways, like offensively, outplayed Vancouver. Vancouver was the more physical team, but that was a tough game for Toronto. Now they're going to Seattle with no time off, and then Toronto has back-to-back games against Winnipeg and a home coming up on Wednesday and Saturday. I don't like the spot at all for Toronto. It's a sandwich spot, and they have no rest, man. It's a back-to-back. It's a third game in 4 days, and it's a fourth game in 6 days, all in different cities. It's actually a fifth game in 8 days, all in different cities, and it is a sixth in 9, and it is a seventh game in 11 days. They have had an absolutely packed schedule with almost no rest days in between there. That's bad. It's a bad spot for Toronto, and yesterday's game was a big-time effort game. And they've faced Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, so they did the whole Western Canada leg there, and now they're coming back down to the U.S., facing Seattle, and Seattle, after they were on that real hot streak, winning whatever it was, 8 or 9 games in a row. I think it was 8. They've now lost 3 in a row. And yes, they're returning home from a long road trip. A 6-game road trip where they won the first 3 and lost the last 3, although they lost to Pittsburgh, the Rangers, and Edmonton, and those are all tough games. Edmonton, at least, they were not on the East Coast anymore at that point, and they were coming back home. So that Edmonton one was actually kind of a tough spot with 1 day off, having to go from New York all the way to Edmonton. That's a lot of travel. So that was actually kind of a tough spot. But now, even though, yes, they're returning home, it's a bit of a shorter trip, at least, coming up from Edmonton back to Seattle. And they've had 2 days off to rest a little bit. So even though the return home is a distracted spot typically, they've had 2 days off at least, and they have a good team in Toronto coming into their house. I think Seattle's that extra day off might help disrupt their losing momentum a little bit. Toronto's in a much worse spot, in my opinion here. I think Seattle's return home might be mitigated a little bit by the extra rest and the fact that it is Toronto coming into their house. I think they'll be focused on Toronto, man, because their next games are against Chicago, St. Louis, Columbus, and San Jose. Yeah, you know that guy, Jose? No, San Jose. So Seattle, all those games that are upcoming are against lesser teams in Toronto. So I think they're going to be focused on this Toronto game. Toronto coming into their house, and Toronto's basically in a sandwich spot with Seattle being the team with the worst record out of those teams that they're facing in these few games here. So even though it looks like Gord for Seattle is suspended for charging. I don't know. But I like the spot there for Seattle. The market looks like it's in agreement with me. And then moving to the NFL, currently I don't have any plays at this point in the NFL. We have Tampa and the Lions are at 3 p.m. Eastern. I know I mentioned that I like that I do like the Tampa side in this one, but the market looks like it's shifting to be in disagreement with me on this one. I mentioned it all in my big NFL video, but I think the Lions are in a big emotional letdown spot, man. That was such a historic win for the Lions, having a home playoff win in front of their fans, which had not happened in so long that everybody was basically like in tears, and it was Jared Goff beating Matthew Stafford and that whole thing, a huge emotional game for him too, beating the quarterback who he was traded for, who everybody says is better now because Stafford is the Super Bowl winner and Goff isn't. That was such an emotional game. And people are going to credit the Lions, I think, way more for beating the Rams, and they're going to credit the Buccaneers for beating Philadelphia team who just really just crash landed into the playoffs and just looked dead, unfortunately, for some of my plays there, for my play there. So I think Tampa's going to get no credit for beating Philadelphia, but the Lions will get a bunch of credit because people expected the Rams to win that game against the Lions in a lot of cases. But people expected the Buccaneers to win. So the Buccaneers did win, but the Lions surprised people, I think, by winning, even though they were a home favorite. So situationally, yeah, I do still like the Buccaneers here, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it because The number never got to 7. I was hoping it would hit 7 at some point during the week. It was at 6.5, pretty much all week. The Lions still look like they're around 6.5 or 6 with juice now in places. 68% of the cash on them now, 65% of the tickets. So the cash discrepancy does look like it's on the Lions, even though the Lions are the public team. The cash discrepancy is more reminiscent of the one on San Francisco, although, yeah, San Francisco didn't cover and probably had no business covering in that game. So I don't know. This one's tougher to read than I first thought, so I might wind up not playing this game. I mean, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see if I throw in any like additional plays here. I don't know if I'm actually going to do it. And then I do still lean to the under in this one with it being at 49.5, and it looks like it might be going to 50. Buccaneers, 69% of the tickets, the over has 69% of the tickets, but 60% of the cash. So the market looks like it's indicating on, and it just went down to 59% of the cash, though. So the market looks like it is, on the over, which is more of an indicator on the under as well. It's moving even more towards the under. So I lean to the under in this one. And the Buccaneers have the better defense. The Lions' defense is not good. So even though the Lions, of course, have the better offense, the Buccaneers have the better defense. And you would be getting points with the better defense if you're playing the Buccaneers here. So I like those aspects of it. And I think the Lions are actually in more uncharted waters than the Buccaneers are, even though Goff and Baker Mayfield have both played to this level of the playoffs before. So the quarterback experience is a little bit of a wash and actually more on the side of Goff. But as far as like the team is concerned, I think the Buccaneers overall, as far as the personnel, the coaching, and who's on the team, I think the Buccaneers have the experience advantage a little bit in that one. And then Chiefs-Bills, this one's tough as well. I mean, the Bills have been sitting at 2.5 all week, and it's been juiced. The juice has been going up on the 2.5. Books have been hesitant to go to the 3. It seems like they don't want to have the market shift. I think they think they're going to get lopsided money on the Chiefs if they go to the 3. So I think that's what's going on there, but it's a little weird, so I don't like that aspect of it. Bills have 55% of the tickets and 54% of the cash, so they look slightly public, and it looks like the cash discrepancy is now on the Chiefs a little bit in that one. I don't love that aspect of it. I know I said that I lean the Bills. In situation, I do still lean to the Bills, even though, like I said, people are talking about, although it seems like it's being less talked about than I thought, and people are kind of saying, well, this is being talked about too much. I don't think it is. The fact that Mahomes, it's his first road playoff game, his first true road playoff game, which is true. That is the case. It is. So we don't know exactly how he's going to perform in the most hostile of NFL environments is a playoff road game like this. And I don't know if the travel is going to be impacted because people are also talking about how the Bills have 2 fewer days off because they played on Monday, but they are also not traveling. The Chiefs have had to travel, and I know there were some travel restrictions because of more snow in Buffalo during the week, so I don't know if that impacted the Chiefs' travel at all. Like, I don't know when the Chiefs actually got in, so I think the travel spot versus the rest spot, I think, is a little bit mitigated, but the Bills are also banged up, so you got to pay attention to the injury reports here, man, because they lost some of their players, especially on the defense in the last game. So you got to look at the injury reports because it looks like most of the guys are playing or questionable at this point, and they only have like 1 or 2 guys who are actually going to be out in this game on the defense. So I think the Bills' defense is mostly going to be intact for this game, so that's good for the Bills. If that is the case, that looks like the case, although it looks like they're going to be down Gabe Davis on the offense. But Shakir, I think is his name, has stepped in pretty well. Yeah, genie in a bottle there. Shakira, he has looked pretty good filling in that role. I think the Bills' offense will still be fine. They have other weapons there. So Josh Allen's really good. They still got Stephon Diggs, even though the Chiefs are going to have some good defenders covering some of these guys. The Bills still have that tight end tandem that are weapons there, and their rushing attack has been pretty good. So I think the Bills undoubtedly have the edge offensively, as I mentioned in my video. It's a close quarterback matchup between Allen and Mahomes, but Allen has more weapons around him than Mahomes does. The Chiefs have morphed into a much better defensive than offensive team, which is crazy. Since Tyreek Hill is gone, but they didn't have him last year when they won the Super Bowl either, but their offense was better last year, and their defense was still good last year, but the defense is better this year, and the offense has regressed a bit. So that's the situation that's going on with the Chiefs. So I do think that the Bills have the better offense here. I think the Chiefs have the slightly better defense, but the Bills, if most of these defensive guys are still going to play in this game, I think it's a close. It's close between these two defenses as far as which one is better. I think the Chiefs are slightly better on defense, and I think the Bills are more than slightly better on offense. And the thing about this game is that this is what it all comes down to for the Bills, man. So is it going to put too much pressure on them, or are they going to be very, very motivated here? Because the Chiefs, even though, yeah, of course, they want to win as many Super Bowls as possible, but they've been in 3 of the last 4 Super Bowls, won 2 of them. They don't have anything left to prove, man. The Bills are the team that people are saying can never get over the hump. The Bills are built for the regular season. Whatever people are saying, they can beat the Chiefs in the regular season, but they can't beat them in the playoffs. I think they've lost to them twice during that span in the playoffs and haven't been able to get past them in the playoffs. So that's the knock on them. I actually think the Bills are the slightly better team, so I think the line is a little bit short from that aspect of it. So I do still lean to the Bills. And I think if you're going to want to play the Bills, the way to play it would be on the money line because that's separate from a spread bet. And I think you can probably get around minus 140 at some places on the Bills money line because I think what's going to happen, it's like a Super Bowl kind of where this is like the big game of the week. The bettors are going to be coming in, and a lot of the bettors are going to just like seeing the plus money on the Chiefs money line. I think this is like a toss-up game. Oh, and I can bet 100 to win 120 something or whatever, or 130 on the Chiefs. That's what I'm going to do. So I think a lot of bettors are going to be enticed by that. You get more money back for your bet if you play the underdog. So I think that's going to influence the money line market, and it's going to make the Bills a cheaper money line play, like what happens in the Super Bowl sometimes on these favorites. So, and then you get the Bills just to win the game outright as well. So that's the way that I lean on the side, and that would be to do it on the Bills money line. And then the best play, I think, on this whole board, actually, my opinion now is that the best way to play any of these games is to play the under in the Chiefs-Bills game, but it's down from 47.5 to 45.5, and I'm hoping it moves back up a little bit, but 47 is pretty key, and I don't know if it's going to get back up there, but you have 69% of tickets on the over and 50% of the tickets evenly split in that market. I like the under here, man, because people look at this game and it's Mahomes, Allen. Everybody loves the quarterbacks. So I think people know the Chiefs' offense has been struggling, but I still think people are going to see this and they want the higher scoring game. They like both of these quarterbacks. They're going to want to play the over here. The public likes to play overs in games like this where you have 2 of the best quarterbacks in the league facing off. I think they're really discounting the fact that both of these teams' defenses are good. People don't realize, I think it's still understated how good these defenses are. The Chiefs are very good defense, like a top 5 defense in the NFL, and I think the Bills are not far behind that, especially if they get most of these players back on their defense. These defenses are both good, man, and I think this is going to be kind of like a heavyweight fight because these teams, like, this is like it's become a huge rivalry now. And I think especially on the side of the Bills, because the Chiefs have that like Bengals rivalry going on too. But I think it's going to be like a fight where it's going to start like slow. It's going to be like a heavyweight fight. Like they're feeling each other out early. They don't want to make mistakes early, especially Josh Allen, because he has been mistake prone this year. That's been the thing that's been holding the Bills back because the Bills are really, really talented, and the turnovers have been kind of holding them down a bit and not letting them reach their like full potential here. So I think they're going to not want to go totally crazy here. I think it's going to be more of a feel out type of game. The Bills definitely can run the ball. And it's a cold weather game as well. It's going to be probably around 20 degrees in this game. So I think that's going to hamper the offenses a bit as well, even though we saw the Chiefs play a lower scoring game last week. People are going to look at it and say, well, it's mostly because Miami just didn't score, and Miami was terrible in that game. The Chiefs put up an okay point total, and the Bills scored 30, whatever, and they played in the cold. So people are only going to want to play the over here. They're going to remember that Chiefs-Bills playoff game in Arrowhead a couple years ago where the game soared way, way over the total. But as I mentioned, I think I was on the over in that one, and the total was higher than it was in this game because the Chiefs had a way better offense back then. I think Tyreek Hill was on the team back then as well. That game would have gone under if the Chiefs were able to get one more first down, if I remember correctly, and run out the clock. There was some situation where I believe it was the Chiefs had the lead at that point. They could have just won the game right then and run out the clock, but they weren't able to get the first down, had to punt, and then it was touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. The teams just the floodgates just totally unloaded, and there were at least 3 touchdowns in the final like minute and a half of that game or whatever it was, something like that. It was crazy, and then it went into overtime and more scoring happened. So the game wound up going over the total by 20, 30 points, whatever it was, and like it wound up being like 78, and people are going to look at that and be like, or maybe even higher than that. I don't even know. People might remember that game and think like this is going to be kind of a somewhat of a repeat of that. And that game went so far over that, well, 45.5 is so low. Of course it's going to go over 45.5, right? I don't think so, man. Because like I said, that game was going to wind up going under the like high 40s or 50 number or whatever it was in that game. Had the Chiefs gotten that one first down. So that was the difference in that one. So I do kind of like the under in this one. And I would wait to see what happens because I don't think the number is going to go down anymore. It would only go back up once the public starts getting involved. So the best way to play the NFL today, I think, is to play the under in the Chiefs-Bills game. So back to what are the actual plays that I have on the card right now for today? NBA, we got Washington Wizards plus 13.5. I'm kind of worried about that one, to be honest. It just feels awful. And then I'm on the Seattle Kraken in the NHL plus 100. That's going to do it for me, man. Let's do it. I want to keep this nice run rolling, but with very few plays today, who knows what's going to happen. But peace out, man. Enjoy the Sunday.